Popular YouTuber and who's an atheist and feminist, Steve Shrives. I'm not sure how he likes to be called, but on YouTube he's Steve Shrives. So he did a video on this page, and we're gonna watch it in full. Then we're gonna watch the videos that were made against it, where they put in commentary and where important parts are needed. Now here's this video, why YouTube atheism needs feminism.
4 out of 5 dentists surveyed would recommend Trident to their patients who chew gum. But what about the 5th dentist?
Yes.
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 Yes. No! One thing's for sure, great tasting sugar-free Trident helps fight cavities.
Atheism and feminism are naturally complementary to one another. There is no human institution that has done so much in so many cultures across such a long period of time to hold women down as organized religion. For most of the history of civilization, the proposition that women ought to be treated equally to men was just as radical as the proposition that gods did not exist. Before I get too far into this, I want to make it clear that I will be using multiple senses of the word atheism throughout this video. This will be obvious to most of you from the context of what I'm saying, but bitter experience tells me that it will not be so obvious to a few of you. So before you post an angry comment presuming to inform me that atheism means not believing in gods and that's all it means, let me say that I agree with the first half of that statement, but also remind you that not everyone uses the term to mean that and only that. Atheism can also refer to the community of atheists or the body of work produced by that community. It's totally legitimate to notice trends within that community or body of work and to propose that something be done to change those trends that I find troubling. I'm not proposing that we redefine what atheism means, and I'm not suggesting that people who disagree with me about stuff are not authentic atheists. Okay? Good. Now I'm going to turn into another shot to disguise a jump cut. Hey, as I was saying, given the fact that both atheists and advocates for the rights of women have historically been oppressed by organized religion, and also given the fact that modern atheism has largely rejected other regressive attitudes traditionally promoted by religious fundamentalism, like hostility to science and modern medicine, or overt prejudice against LGBT people, you might think that atheism and feminism would be the strongest of allies. And in the minds of many atheists and many feminists, they are. Thanks to the internet, I have a fairly large circle of friends and acquaintances who, like me, identify as both atheist and feminist, and find that the two fit together quite neatly. My friends and I aren't alone. Voices supportive of feminism are everywhere in the atheist community. Unfortunately, there is also a faction within atheism that is aggressively hostile toward women in general and outspoken feminists in particular. This faction is most active here on YouTube. Within it are several of the most subscribed to atheist channels. These regularly feature videos attacking feminists, spreading misinformation about feminism, and attempting to undermine efforts to address problems of importance to feminists, such as sexual assault or the wage gap. Beyond that, their supporters eagerly join the effort, inundating comment sections with insults, pedantic demands for evidence of even mundane and uncontroversial claims, and childish declarations that they have been pwned or wrecked. Commenters of this sort also like to challenge feminists to debates on behalf of their favorite anti-feminists. Occasionally, especially if the target is a woman, they'll even resort to doxing or threats of physical violence. The high-profile anti-feminist YouTubers don't directly instigate these actions of their followers, but they don't seem all that concerned with them either, despite these sorts of things being done in their names by self-professed fans of theirs all the time. There are two major results of this. First, feminists, especially women, either stop participating in the YouTube atheist community or decide not to start. And second, the atheist community as a whole is perceived by those outside of it as being a place where sexism and misogyny are not merely tolerated, but rewarded. It seems to me that both of these results are undesirable. One of the most damaging effects wrought on society by religion has been the subjugation of women. For centuries, we've been told that women are unfit for leadership, ought to be kept in narrow gender roles as wives and mothers, and are undeserving of autonomy and generally less worthy than men. Many atheists are quick to speak out against the religious oppression of women today, whether it's found here in the West or in other parts of the world. But if we're going to cite the mistreatment of women as a point against religion, shouldn't we be vigilant about identifying and confronting the mistreatment of women in our own communities? Religious oppression of women can be easy to spot. Churches have rules banning women from certain roles, imposing rigid standards of dress and conduct, establishing gender-segregated worship services, and so on. Oppression of women in the YouTube atheist community is not nearly so formal. Nowhere is it codified that women should not be allowed to speak freely. But the hostility toward feminism, the petulant complaining in response to attempts to address sexism, and the outright withering abuse that greets women in this community all add up to send an unmistakable message. You and your point of view are not welcome here. Many atheists also identify as humanists, or at least share many key humanist values. But it seems to me that no humanist worthy of the label would tolerate women being mistreated in their community. Women being human, last I checked. Humanism and feminism don't stand in opposition to each other, and anyone who thinks they do has misunderstood at least one and probably both of those things. What about the role YouTube atheism's pronounced streak of misogyny plays in how atheism is perceived by non-atheists? Though the anti-feminist YouTubers aren't representative of the broader community, theirs are often among the first voices encountered by people who are curious about atheism. Like most minority groups, atheists are often misrepresented. We need to make sure that the stereotype of an atheist as an angry, condescending male chauvinist is just that, a straw man that doesn't represent the general character of our community. And we don't do that by rounding up the anti-feminists and running them out of town on a rail, as I have occasionally been accused of advocating. We do that by speaking up for ourselves, by making our voices louder and more numerous than theirs. We need to make it clear to them, to ourselves, and to those outside of our community with whom we hope to coexist in freedom and peace and equality, that the anti-feminists, the sexists, the misogynists do not speak for us. To some of you, this may sound like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. Women aren't being forced to undergo genital mutilation or marry into indentured servitude on YouTube. But if the amount of anti-feminist rhetoric, not to mention the exuberant applause that often greets that rhetoric, is keeping atheist women from having a stronger voice in our community, and it is, isn't that a problem? And if that rhetoric consists not merely of honest, informed disagreement, but straw manning and demonizing of feminism of the sort that we would never tolerate were it directed at atheism, and it does, shouldn't we be standing against it? This isn't the first time I've talked about this. I've spoken out strongly in support of feminism numerous times, and it's always incensed a certain portion of those who watched those videos. Some even try to deflect the charge of being anti-feminist by claiming that it's only third-wave feminism that they really have a problem with. In my experience, most people who make such comments demonstrate an understanding of third-wave feminism roughly equivalent to the average younger creationist's understanding of the second law of thermodynamics. I've also lost count of how many times I've received indignant comments declaring that though I call myself an atheist, feminism is my true religion. A religion, as any self-professing atheist worth a damn ought to know, is typically defined as a belief system based on divine revelations and dogmatic principles handed down from unquestionable authorities. Anyone who believes that something like a divine revelation is necessary to recognize the ongoing oppression of women, or that feminists are mindless followers of authority, needs to take his head out of his ass. Such a worldview is only possible if the perception of the person holding it is clouded by ignorance or warped by unconscious bias. Two conditions that we who fancy ourselves skeptics strive to correct, do we not? I've even suggested that the atheist movement would be better off if it adopted an approach more like that of intersectional feminism, which seeks to understand how different forms of discrimination overlap and amplify each other. What good is an atheist movement that primarily concerns itself with the most privileged members of the atheist community and treats women, people of color, and LGBT folk as afterthoughts? The answer I get most often from people who don't like this suggestion, and to be clear, there are plenty of my fellow atheists who agree with me and are, in fact, way ahead of me on this, is that I'm trying to make atheism into an exclusive club, where only atheists who also agree with me on other stuff that isn't directly related to atheism are welcome. This objection misses the point of intersectionality, which encourages diversity by highlighting issues of concern to people who are already in our community but are often overlooked. An intersectional atheist would necessarily be someone who wants the movement to be even broader and more inclusive than it already is, valuing the contributions of a wide variety of people with a wide variety of ideas. But what about the charge that feminism and atheism just don't belong together? Perhaps, to appropriate a phrase from a famous atheist who was not afraid to call out sexism when he saw it, they are simply non-overlapping magisteria. I wish that more of the people who complained about what they see as an unwelcome injection of feminism into atheism felt the same way about the infusion of misogyny into it. Because the truth is, I wouldn't be so keen to talk about feminism in the context of the atheist community if the atheist community, particularly here on YouTube, were not so tolerant of the awful, backwards attitudes toward women displayed by some of its most prominent members. Why are misogyny and anti-feminism regarded as things we just have to accept as an unavoidable part of an ideologically diverse community, but feminism is regarded as unwarranted and intrusive? Angry, hateful, ignorant, reactionary anti-feminist rhetoric? Well, you might not agree with it, but we wouldn't want those who do agree with it to feel unwelcome in our community. And as for the women who have fled our community or never came within a mile of it in the first place because of those who spew and praise such rhetoric, well, you know what? To hell with them. I guess they're just not as good at tolerating disagreement as the rest of us are. Now shut the fuck up, SJW, is, I believe, how the rest of that goes. Women are not the only demographic to be marginalized and mistreated in our community, and particularly here on YouTube. People of color and LGBT folk, among others, struggle for equal time in atheist circles just as they do in other communities and in society in general. I've chosen to focus on the mistreatment of women because, in my opinion, that problem is the most obvious and the most tacitly condoned. But that certainly doesn't mean there aren't other rooms in this house long overdue for a cleaning. Problems like the one I've spent this video discussing are not unique to YouTube atheism or to atheism as a social movement. All major human rights movements have struggled with them, including feminism, which has a long and well-documented history of centering itself on white women and neglecting women of color. The question we now face as atheists is, will we learn from the mistakes of the great social movements like feminism that came before us? Will we strive to empower the marginalized members of our community? Or will we continue to stand by and silently consent while ignorant reactionary bullies push them further and further into the margins? I spent too many years standing by as women were demeaned, abused, and browbeaten by some of my fellow atheists on YouTube and their fans. It's embarrassing, it's indefensible, it harms us as individuals and as a community, and it is long past time that we put a stop to it. This is a problem throughout our community, but it is especially pronounced here on YouTube. We can do something about it by making our voices heard, by not only speaking out against sexism and misogyny, but by supporting atheist channels like the ones whose names are now on the screen and which are also linked in the description box of this video. This is by no means a comprehensive list. Some of these channels feature outspoken feminist content, some hardly ever mention the subject, but they all promote science, reason, humanism, and secularism without denigrating women and demonizing feminists. And they, and many others like them who aren't listed, deserve our attention and our support. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed this or other videos I've done, please consider supporting this channel. You can go to www.patreon.
Now, we've seen this full video in context, okay? He said he knows his stuff. He's well educated on the topics of feminism, and he understands that feminism, before it became intersectional, only focused on white women's issues in America and ignored the issues of African American women and issues of Jewish women and so forth. Now, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to feminism, when it comes to YouTube atheist as well. So, why do I mean by he's taken out of context? Well, there's people here on YouTube who are willing to debunk Steve Shrives. And I'm just going to go into my history and look for the video. Now, remember, we watched this whole video from start to finish. Now, Sargon.
Chris, kind of out there.
Now, Sargon of Akkad is going to try to make Steve Shrives sound like he has no idea what he's talking about, and he's going to purposely cut Steve Shrives' video in an important point which he tries to make. And like I said, remember, we watched the full video. So see where this guy tries to cut Steve Shrives off and tries to say, no, 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 you're wrong, no, we're right, we're right, we're right. Watch where this guy tries to pull Bill O'Reilly bullcrap.
The Catholic Church, because women certainly weren't a...
Hey.
Hi, Steve. What crazy bullshit do you have for us today?
Given the fact that both atheists and advocates for the rights of women have historically been oppressed by organized religion.
Right, okay, let's be honest with ourselves, Steve. When you say organized religion, you mean the Catholic Church, because women certainly weren't oppressed by the Eleusinian mysteries or anything.
No, he doesn't only mean the Catholic Church. See, this is the problem. Don't you see he cut Steve Shrives off when he said organized religion? No, it happens in Judaism as well, especially in New York. If you go to a lot of the Jewish Orthodox synagogues, women sit on top and the men practice during the worship service, because women in the Jewish religion can't read or can't read any holy books. It's sacred for men only. That's how the Jewish religion works. So anyway, that's what he meant by organized religion. He didn't just mean Catholicism. No, there's other religions where women are demonized as well. But let's see, with your Bill O'Reilly rhetoric, try to keep debunking this guy, acting like he doesn't know what he's talking about, when in actuality he does.
Like that.
And also given the fact that modern atheism has largely rejected other regressive attitudes traditionally promoted by religious fundamentalism, like hostility to science and modern medicine, or overt prejudice against LGBT people.
Steve, that's not a consequence of any kind of modern atheism. That's not the atheist community doing something unusual and rare and saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be dicks to LGBT people.
You might think that atheism and feminism would be the strongest of allies.
No, I would think they would be complete polar opposites, actually, Steve. And that's one thing that really confuses me about people like you. Many people become atheists because of dogmatic ideological religions. They are tired of being told what to do and how to do it by people whose moral authority comes only through a potentially non-existent being.
Yes, but here's the thing, though. I did a hangout with two friends of mine, and we were discussing the question, how can atheists be more trustful and respectful? So anyway, one of the points that was brought up is just because someone's an atheist doesn't make them a better person. Like if they were a racist when they were a religious person, chances are they're going to be a racist as a atheist. If they were a homophobe as a religious person, chances are they're going to be a homophobe as an atheist. If they were just an asshole altogether as a religious person, chances are they're going to be an asshole altogether as an atheist. So the point is, just because someone's an atheist doesn't automatically make them a better person. And the other thing why people become atheists, maybe there's a certain reason why they leave the religion. It's not because only the reason that people just stop believing in the dogmatics of that religion. No, there are atheists like me, and there's a lot in America and around the world who are Unitarian Universalists. We don't have any specific belief in any higher deity, but we do stick to the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, which is basic human morality. Now, that's exactly what Steve Shrives is trying to say, that atheists should be more humane to women, but apparently you seem to have a problem with this.
Feminism is much the same way. It is a dogmatic ideology.
No, it isn't. Feminism is not a dogmatic ideology. Feminists don't have a god. If feminism was a religion, because religion is more dogmatic than anything, if feminism was a religion, Susan B. Anthony would be the creator of the heavens and the earth. The point being is, feminism is a movement, not a dogmatic ideology. Feminism discusses women's rights and women's problems in America that needs to be addressed. And he's trying to push for intersectional feminism, which includes the oppression of all women, not only white, but Black, Asian, Muslim, Jewish, and so forth.
It has its own evil god, and it has its own tenets.
No, it doesn't. It does not have a god. It doesn't have its prophets or anything. So far, your arguments against feminism are completely strawmanning. Exactly as Steve Shrives said in his video.
I mean, I even think feminism provides spiritual comfort to many women who practice it. I really do, Steve. It baffles me why anyone who is actually a skeptical and rational thinker.
First of all, again, feminism is not a religion, just like atheism isn't a religion. Okay? Feminism is a movement. It has always been a movement since the 1970s, if you actually care to look up your goddamn history. And does it give comfort to women who are a part of the feminist movement? Does it give women comfort to know that men are fighting for feminism as well? Yes, it does. Is that a bad thing? No, it is not.
Enough to be able to reject one religion would adopt another.
And in the minds of many atheists and many feminists, they are.
Yeah, but that's because those people are unwilling to actually let go of religion, or they're contemptuous of women.
Oh. As you can see, this guy knows literally nothing about feminism. Okay. There are 3 types of atheists. There are agnostic atheists. May I emphasize on the A? Agnostic atheists, which are atheists who don't believe in God but can't confirm if there is or isn't a God because they lack that information. Neil deGrasse Tyson is an agnostic atheist. There is gegnostic atheists, emphasis on the G, gegnostic atheists, who are like Bill Maher and Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, who don't give a shit about religion. They hate all religion and they don't think about it that much. And they absolutely have this ideal that there is no God, there's no afterlife, there's nothing after we die. And there are people like me who are spiritual atheists, who are the Unitarian Universalist atheists, or maybe not Unitarian Universalist atheists, but we're naturally spiritual people. And we say, and we have respect for religious people and their beliefs, but we don't like it when those beliefs are being forced upon us or anyone else, and we'll call it out. But other than that, we respect religious people for doing good in the name of their religion, and we call out those who do the most horrendous acts in the name of their religion, but we don't criticize religion as a whole. So there are three different types of atheists here, okay? There are three different branches of atheism. There's not just one branch. Apparently, this guy's a agnostic atheist.
The thing is, you get loads of Jewish, Christian, and Islamic feminists anyway. It's not something that's exclusive to any of them.
His whole video was about intersectional feminism, so you're proving his point.
It's the sort of nonsense that can be bolted onto any existing ideological construct. Anything that already is a thing could become a feminist version of that thing.
No. Oh, God. I'm going to do another example for you guys. Okay. You have, I don't know, you have, okay, a perfect example. If you look at models, especially through Playboy's history, do you know who the first centerfold of Playboy magazine was? In 1957, no, not 1957, before that, early to mid-1950s, Marilyn Monroe was Hugh Hefner's first centerfold. Now, Marilyn Monroe was pear-shaped. She was average weight, and men wanted to date women who looked like Marilyn Monroe, because Marilyn Monroe was the hottest woman on the face of the earth in a lot of men's eyes. So they wanted to date women who looked like Marilyn Monroe. Now in the 60s, pear-shaped women were becoming less favorable by men, and more of the skinny, petite women, because the average type woman to a man at that point in the 60s was too heavy. So she was undesirable, undateable. And so you had skinny, petite women who were the hot woman that a man wanted to date. Now in the 70s, it was like slim women, not petite but slim. Then petite women became undesirable by men. Then slim women became desirable by men. The point is, there's a trend in what men find attractive, and society has a huge influence on that. So when people say, "Oh, feminism is nonsense," no, it isn't, because when you look at sexism, it can be seen as body shaming towards women. Like, for example, another example, I used this in my video when I called out Thunderfoot. You have three men walking into a bar on a Friday night. These three men are in their early to mid-20s, and there's three women who are bartenders. One who is a skinny, petite woman, one who's a average shape, and one who's heavy set. These men are going to go googly-eyed, puppy-eyed over the one who's skinny and petite, because to these men, the other two women are undesirable because they don't look attractive enough. And see, this is the issue when it comes to sexism, and clearly Steve Shrives is right, because other YouTube atheists like this guy and many others are ignoring the problems.
All you have to do is accept feminist dogma. And personally, I would have thought that...
You know what? I really can't stand when atheists act like they're all smart and knowledgeable, but the truth is there's a lot of atheists on YouTube that really aren't, and that all they do is try to debunk claims by pulling facts out of their ass, which aren't real statistics. You know, Steve Shrives was really taken out of context with that video, and quite honestly, he's more well-educated than most YouTube atheists I've ever seen so far. So, you know what, Steve? Keep doing what you're doing. I encourage you. I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is essentially important to raise the problems that women face in America, especially around the world. Keep doing what you're doing, because we need more people like you on YouTube. See you guys.